Welcome to the WWE Podcast, your number one source for the latest in WWE news and straightforward analysis. Are you ready to get this thing going?
Give me a hell yeah! I said give me a hell yeah!
Then let's get this show started right now.
Hey guys, what's going on, and welcome back to a brand new edition of Rivalries on the WWE Podcast after a 1-week hiatus on my part. I'm very sorry, but as was in the description from the episode we released from the vault last week, I was under the weather, and I wasn't sick per se, but I just completely lost my voice. I really don't know what exactly happened, but for whatever the reason, I just completely lost my voice, and I couldn't speak. So Matt did me a solid and released a Rivalries edition that was actually the invasion angle of the Alliance versus Team WWF. And if you haven't checked that out, I would thoroughly suggest it because it was a pretty cool angle to go through and cover. But I am back this week for a brand new edition, and this week we are going to jump into The Rock versus Triple H in one of the most important angles in the tail end of the Attitude Era. And it's funny because I came to this rivalry because I've realized that, well, more specifically Triple H, but these are the two guys that I have used the most or featured the most when talking about rivalries. My last original episode was Triple H versus Seth Rollins. I've done Triple H versus the McMahons along with Shawn Michaels. I did Triple H versus Shawn Michaels. I did Triple H versus Shawn Michaels versus Chris Benoit. But although I don't want it to become too saturated with Triple H, you have to realize that in a lot of ways, Triple H has been the one constant in WWE for the last 20 years, or right up until 2019, because I feel like after his program with Batista, another rivalry I covered here, he really kind of like went off into the sunset. He hasn't had a true program since then. I'm sure a lot of that is due to COVID, and I think his last in-ring match, if I'm not mistaken, was against Randy Orton at a Saudi Arabia show in May of 2019. I don't think it was Crown Jewel, Superstar Showdown, one of those weird shows they do out there. But his program with The Rock really started in the summer of 1998. And this was post Shawn Michaels' time at the top of WWE. And by this point, Triple H was leading D-Generation X, and The Rock had taken over for Farouk as in The Rock's words, the ruler of the Nation of Domination. And it actually, when they started having this initial rivalry between the two of them, it was faction versus faction. And I really do think that is a bit of a lost art in WWE, the faction versus faction type of programs. And I remember it actually led to a 4-on-4 street fight between D-Generation X and the Nation of Domination, DX being Triple H, X-Pac, and the New Age Outlaws and Billy Gunn and Road Dogg. And the Nation of Domination featuring The Rock, D'Lo Brown, Mustafa, aka The Godfather, and Mark Henry. And I believe that was on an episode of Monday Night Raw. And then it ultimately led to a ladder match for the Intercontinental Championship at SummerSlam 1998. And I believe it was kind of make a carbon copy of the Razor Ramon Shawn Michaels ladder match at WrestleMania 10 for the Intercontinental Championship. Obviously not as historic and known, but it's still a very good match. Mark Henry was at ringside with The Rock. China was at ringside with Triple H, and I believe this was the time where the whole Mark Henry and China love angle was going on. So they each played respective roles in the matches, and Triple H eventually won the match. And then this is when The Rock really started to transition into the main event, while Triple H was still kind of in that mid-card, because he broke away from the Nation of Domination, and then by Survivor Series 1998, we had The Rock seemingly turning babyface, and then we get the kayfabe version of the Montreal Screwjob 2.0. The Rock beats Mankind in the finals for the WWF Championship tournament, and he wins the WWF Championship as the corporate champion, the face for Vince McMahon and Shane McMahon's corporation, and becomes the heel champion. This obviously leads into a program with Mankind. Mankind wins the WWF Championship on a historic angle on Monday Night Raw, where he was actually backed by D-Generation X, led by Triple H, and then The Rock and him trade the championship a couple times. It leads to Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock at WrestleMania 15 for the first installment of their trio of WrestleMania main events. And this is kind of when we started to see Triple H get into that upper mid card, or even start to sniff that main event during 1999. Because Triple H, it's kind of hard to track what he was all about in 1999, because obviously he was the leader of DX, then he made the switch over to the heel side and joined the corporation and the corporate ministry, and there was a time where it was him and The Undertaker versus The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, because The Rock turned babyface following WrestleMania 15, and then Triple H ultimately ended up going back to D-Generation X in 2000 with the McMahon-Helmsley regime, which we got to. But Triple H really broke out here when Stone Cold Steve Austin had to step away for his time to rehab his neck. And that's what really opened the door for Triple H. He won his first WWE Championship in August of 1999 following SummerSlam, or the Monday Night Raw following SummerSlam, after Mankind won it and dropped it a day later. And by this point, they were pushing him into the main event because, as I just said, Stone Cold Steve Austin was stepping away at this time, or beginning to step in that direction. I forget exactly what day or month he stepped away in the fall of 99. And simultaneously, The Undertaker was away, and by 1999, The Undertaker had become arguably the biggest heel in the company. So you had the largest babyface in the company and the largest heel in the company away due to injury. And it really opened the door for The Rock and Triple H to elevate themselves into the main event, undisputed, uncontested. And that really culminated on the first ever episode of SmackDown on August 26, 1999. And the main event was the newly crowned WWF champion in Triple H defending his title against The Rock in the main event with Shawn Michaels as the special guest referee. And this was the first clash of these two one-on-one, with them as the undisputed main eventers, and something we would be accustomed to see for the succeeding 12 to 18 months, I would say, with these two at the top of the card, especially with The Undertaker and Stone Cold away. And Taker and Austin missed time and missed the succeeding WrestleMania as well. They missed WrestleMania 16 entirely. So with them away, The Rock and Triple H are set to go at it for the WWF Championship in late August of 1999 on the first ever episode of SmackDown. And it was interesting to see how this would culminate.
I don't like the son of a gun, but he's a hell of an athlete. It's Triple H. Got a knee. Perfectly executed right in the head. There's a lateral press. 1, 2, and a kick out by The Rock. A near fall. And now Triple H has the challenger grounded. The WWF title on the line right here tonight on SmackDown. Look at Shane. Just gotta keep an eye on things. Shawn Michaels is a heck of a referee. He knows that Shane McMahon could and perhaps will do anything. I saw him climb to the top rope and dive. Like I've never seen anybody dive in life, risk life and limb to dive on Test, busting through a table. That was at SummerSlam this past Sunday. It was an amazing move, an amazing performance by Shane McMahon in that contest. You got to give him credit for that, no doubt about it. And you thought Shane's arm was broken, didn't you? Oh, get ready to ring the bell. Shawn Michaels testing up The Rock. Michaels will raise that arm and it drops for the third time. This match will end. And The Rock is still in this game. The Rock brings him down. With the gold on the line, The owner of the SmackDown Hotel is putting the SmackDown on Triple H. That was a great move by Helmsley. Hot shot. Helmsley hung on the top of his head. And the Rock, again, the Rock said this match won. Shane and Shawn tied it up. And Triple H, well, Shane McMahon had Shawn Michaels right in Michaels' face and made a distraction there. Well, Helmsley's a lucky man, I'll tell you. Now look at the Rock. Nothing pretty or fancy about those right hands. Rock couldn't have held Triple H down anyhow. Oh! Swinging that breaker. By the first third-generation superstar in WWF history. It's going to take care of Shane McMahon. He hit the owner. Oh, no. Look out here. It's going to be over. I can't believe it. Rock bottom. We're going to have a new champion. Oh, no. Here it comes. We're going to have a new champion. I think I'm smelling what the Rock's cooking here. People's elbow coming up, King. You're fixing to see the most electrifying move in sports entertainment today. Here it comes. It's over. Oh, what the hell? Shawn Michaels, the super kick, the Rock. What? My God. What did we just see? What is this? Shawn Michaels just super kicked the Rock when the Rock had the WWF title won. The shot. I think I saw it. Oh no! The Rock had the title won and in the pedigree. And that's just, can you kidding me? I can't believe it.
So, great wrestling psychology. Throughout the match, you have Shane McMahon playing the heel outside, trying to aid in favor of Triple H, and Shawn Michaels at least pretending to be a very impartial referee. And then finally, when The Rock seemingly has the match won after rock bottom, looks to hit the people's elbow and gets caught with sweet chin music, and Shawn Michaels helping out his longtime friend Triple H to retain his newly won WWF Championship. And this is what we became accustomed to, as I previously said, over the following 12 to 18 months, with The Rock as the babyface and Triple H as the top heel. And, you know, they had a lot of matches over the following 18 months or so. And at Survivor Series, they were actually slated to be in a triple threat match with Stone Cold Steve Austin, who was ultimately replaced and put on the shelf. He was written off TV as being run over by a car that was revealed to be Triple H and Rikishi. In real life, he went away to rehab his neck, as I previously alluded to, and replaced with the Big Show. And Big Show actually won that triple threat match with The Rock and Triple H. Triple H got the championship back over the winter of 1999 that went into 2000. And he had that feud with Mick Foley. And they had the No Holds Barred match at the Royal Rumble. They had another match at No Way Out. And while this was going on, The Rock was engaged in a feud with The Big Show. And The Rock won the 2000 Royal Rumble. And then he lost that opportunity after losing a match to The Big Show. And one way or another, it culminated in a fatal four-way elimination match at WrestleMania 2000. And I always found this a bit bizarre. You know, I thought that The Rock versus Triple H, given what had happened over the preceding 6 to 8 months, would have been a good enough main event. And by this point, you know, Triple H had finally secured himself as a main eventer in the WWF. And I don't know, these two never had a one-on-one match at a WrestleMania, and I thought that WWE kind of, or WWF, I'm getting all mixed up with the times that we're jumping to, but they kind of missed the boat here. And it wasn't a bad match, the Fatal 4-Way involving these two along with the Big Show and Mick Foley, but I often have felt that it was kind of to make up for the lack of Undertaker or the lack of Stone Cold Steve Austin involved in the card. Because it wasn't a bad WrestleMania, but it certainly lacked star power. Like, a very underrated match here, and I would suggest you guys go check it out, was Benoit versus Angle versus Jericho in a 2 falls match, for the first fall being the European Championship, or wait, no, the first fall being the Intercontinental Championship, and the second fall being for the European Championship, both held by Kurt Angle entering the Mania, and he lost both. Benoit walked away with the Intercontinental, Jericho walked away with the European. This was also the first installment of the trilogy of matches between the Dudley Boys, Edge and Christian, and the Hardy Boys. And like all three other matches, like all other of their matches, Edge and Christian walked away with the tag team championships. There was a hardcore, I don't even know exactly what it was. It was just like this all-out brawl for the hardcore championship that had a 15-minute time limit, and where there were numerous title changes. But yeah, it certainly wasn't the greatest WrestleMania in the world, but it was okay. I would give it a solid 6.5, 7 out of 10. But the main event was entertaining, and the big caveat to this main event was that each competitor had a McMahon in their corner. Triple H had Stephanie McMahon in his corner, The Rock had Vince, Big Show had Shane, and Linda was in for Mick Foley. Big Show got eliminated first, followed by Mick Foley, and then it finally came down to The Rock versus Triple H. And this is, I guess, where we got the one-on-one clash between these two, because they had a solid run. I would say they were in the match alone for at least 15 minutes. And Shane McMahon ended up coming back down to the ring after Big Show had been eliminated. And he attacked his father, Vince, who was in the corner of The Rock. And while Vince was in the back, Shane McMahon started helping Triple H to try and win the contest. Vince McMahon makes his way back to the ring, and then while seemingly out there to help The Rock, he turns heel and hits The Rock over the head with the chair, helping his son-in-law get the championship victory, and thus beginning the McMahon-Helmsley regime. And it was a kind of weird to close out a pay-per-view with a heel going over, or not just a pay-per-view, a WrestleMania, and the ring just got littered with garbage. People were littering the ring with garbage. And I guess eventually they sent the crowd home happy as The Rock came back to the ring, hit Vince with the rock bottom, hit Shane with the rock bottom, hit Stephanie with the rock bottom and the people's elbow. But still kind of a bizarre way for that to close out a WrestleMania, especially the way that we're accustomed to as well. But I guess back then, 21 years ago, different time, and they weren't so focused on, sending the crowd home happy. As we got at the succeeding WrestleMania in 17, we had a similar thing go on as Vince helps The Rock's opponent again go over on him. So 2 WrestleManias in a row, Vince McMahon screwed The Rock. But focusing on this storyline, it kind of led to a 2-3 month long program between The Rock fighting against the McMahon-Helmsley regime. And I'll give you a little taste on what it was like to watch Monday Night Raw while this program was going on.
Cactus, I guess he's talking about. You know, Steph, speaking of sweaty, toothless morons, about 30,000 of them right here. You smell. Listen to this ovation. It's the people's champion. Oh, yes, The Rock. But what's he doing out here? This is the exit time. The man that beat the Big Show this Sunday at No Way Out.
Triple H, The Rock says, we seem to have developed a little pattern here. And that pattern is that every single week you come out here and you run your mouth, and every single week you subject all of us to watch you stand in the middle of the ring, grab a microphone, and you say this. Tonight, I am the game, and in this very ring, for the next 20 minutes,
Is he constipated?
I'm going to be talking and saying absolutely nothing.
Who will it be? Well, the impersonation like that, it'll for sure be The Rock. And what a night this is going to be. Almost 30,000 fans on hand here in the Georgia Dome.
Well, The Rock says, you absolutely suck.
That's what the language actually mean.
You see, Triple H, The Rock says tonight is going to be a special night, but it's not going to be a DX night, because quite frankly, the thought of another DX night makes The Rock want to stick his finger down his throat and spew the people's vomit all over your candy asses.
Ooh, the people's vomit. There, you know he's going for a ride.
Oh, Rock, you're so witty. First, let me comment you on the beautiful pajama top you're wearing. That's very nice.
Uh-oh. Pajama top.
You know, Rock, as much as I hate your no-talent ass, there's one thing I can count on, and that is you coming out here each week and rambling off one of your many catchphrases designed to make us laugh oh so heartily. Oh, it's great stuff, Rock.
So that's just a little exchange that we became accustomed to each and every Monday Night Raw and SmackDown during this era. And that clip is actually from before the WrestleMania. It was the Go Home Raw before No Way Out. So it wasn't quite right after WrestleMania 2000. But that, in a nutshell, was kind of their exchanges each and every week on WWE programming. And following the WrestleMania 2000 match where Vince McMahon and Shane McMahon and Triple H and D-Generation X all kind of joined forces to form kind of like the top heel faction, almost that times version of the Authority that we saw in 2013, 2014, it led to a sequence of matches between The Rock and Triple H. And the first one came at Backlash in 2000. And the stipulation going in was The Rock versus Triple H for the WWF Championship, but with Shane McMahon as the special guest referee. But leading up to the match, Linda McMahon, who was the on-screen CEO and real life at this time CEO, announced that Stone Cold Steve Austin would be in the corner of The Rock. And that was something that was unprecedented, because when these two had been in the same ring with one another before this, more times than not, they were pitted against each other in The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin. And leading up to this, there was the episode on SmackDown where Austin blew up the DX Express while he was in a crane and he dropped a giant piece of concrete on it. But we had not seen Stone Cold Steve Austin in close to 6 months at this point. And even when he appeared on SmackDown, it was a pre-taped video and he didn't actually come out live in the arena. So leading into Backlash, we didn't know if we would see Stone Cold Steve Austin and what would become of The Rock. But when we got to the pay-per-view, the fans were very happy with what played out.
Patterson's here. Briscoe. What? That's a stop. Yes! The Rock kicked out. Look at McMahon. The look on his face. He's going to bust the Rock open. He's going to bust the Rock open. Those grapefruits are growing, baby. Oh, man. He put everything he had behind that one, JR. Well, this is over. This is just what the McMahon-Helmsley regime wanted. What's bigger than a grapefruit? Like a cantaloupe or something? I want you to count to three. Can I make myself clear? Look at McMahon. I want you to count to three. The Rock can't even get up. Stone Cold is here. The Rock will stand up.
So, just when it looks like Stone Cold will not end up showing up at Judgment Day, and Vince has The Rock right where he wants him, with Briscoe and Patterson and Shane all in referee uniforms and then beating the hell out of The Rock with a steel chair, Austin makes his first appearance in a WWE arena in, 6 or 7 months at this point, and helps The Rock win the WWF Championship. And what a pop, eh? It really gave me goosebumps. And to see all these competitors in the ring at one time, The Rock, Triple H, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Vince and Shane, just ultimate heels. Even the referee, Earl Hebner, one of the most iconic officials in the history of the industry. It was really the peak of wrestling, and just this little clip that I played for you embodied that. So The Rock ended up dropping the belt back to Triple H at the following pay-per-view at Judgment Day in an Iron Man match, all, again with the help of the McMahon-Helmsley regime. But this also featured the return of The Undertaker and the debut of the American Badass version of The Undertaker. So Triple H wins the belt back, and I gotta say, guys, The Rock and Triple H, and honestly everyone at this time, they traded the belt back and forth so much when they were entrenched in programs. Like, The Rock and Triple H, I think they traded it back 3 or 4 times. The same thing happened with Mankind and The Rock in the winter of 99. So it's kind of hard to track, and these guys had an action-packed rivalry in a short amount of time with a lot of title changes. So The Undertaker returns, and following Triple H regaining the championship back, and this leads to a 3-on-3 match at the King of the Ring pay-per-view for the WWF Championship. So The Rock, The Undertaker, and Kane versus Triple H, Shane, and Vince. And while it was one team versus the other, there was the lingering stipulation that whoever got the pinfall for the team of The Rock, Taker, and Kane would become the champion. So there was turmoil throughout the match between Kane, Taker, Undertaker, interfering in one another's pinfalls because they all, rightfully so, wanted to be the WWF champion. The Rock ends up getting the pinfall on Vince McMahon following the people's elbow after Undertaker and Kane turned on one another. And this kind of really closed the book on the program between The Rock and Triple H for the time being. They clash at SummerSlam in a triple threat match with Kurt Angle where The Rock retained. But by that point, it was more of a program between Triple H and Kurt Angle, with The Rock just being featured in it to have the championship involved. And this was back when Kurt Angle had the love angle with Stephanie McMahon, and he kissed her on the couch backstage while she was unconscious. So the program, for all intents and purposes, was done with these two by this point. And The Rock had championship matches with Benoit, Fully Loaded. He dropped the belt to Kurt Angle at No Mercy in October of 2000. And from this time right up until, I would say, WrestleMania 17, they really did not cross paths. They were both involved in the six-man Armageddon Hell in a Cell match, but Triple H was really entrenched with Stone Cold Steve Austin in their program upon the latter's return to the company. The Rock had varying programs with The Big Show. Then he reignited his angle with Kurt Angle and ended up getting the championship back at No Way Out 2000. That led to the iconic Mania match between Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, where Austin went over with the help of Vince. And then the following night on Raw, in the rematch inside the steel cage, is when Triple H and The Rock would cross paths again, where Triple H came out and formed the two-man power trip with Stone Cold Steve Austin, and they beat the hell out of The Rock and wrote him off TV for the following 3 or 4 months. And that's the last time they would really cross paths in a confrontational way until the summer of 2002. And by this point, a lot had changed. Austin was out of the company. You had the brand split in full effect. The invasion angle was over. They had unified the WWF Championship and the World Heavyweight Championship. By this point, it was the WWE. So we had the undisputed WWE Championship, that old style belt that Brock and JBL had, which, personal note, I really liked, and I think they should bring that back. But that's neither here nor there, and I digress. So their next and, in a lot of ways, final confrontation with one another came on a Monday Night Raw leading up to the 2002 SummerSlam, where The Rock was scheduled to defend his newly won WWE Undisputed Championship, which he had won at the Vengeance 2002 pay-per-view in a triple threat match with Taker and Kurt Angle. And now he was fully entrenched in the program with Brock Lesnar, and little did we know was going to be one of his final full-time programs with the WWE before he went off to Hollywood. And simultaneously, Triple H was in a program with Shawn Michaels, and they were set to clash at the 2002 pay-per-view, and Shawn Michaels' first match back in a WWE ring in 4.5 years. And this is when we saw The Rock and Triple H cross paths for the first time in almost 18 months.
You point me out to him on TV, Sean. Sean, at SummerSlam, hit your smile.
Wait a minute. What is this? I don't know if Triple H was finished or not, but there is the undisputed WWE Champion. The Rock is back in the house here in Seattle. The Rock on his way to SummerSlam to make the next big thing for the undisputed championship. We're less than 2 weeks away. But the
No, Brock Lesnar. You want to play games with The Rock? You think you want to play mind games? Is that what you want to do? You think you're real smart, Brock Lesnar? Why? Because you came down here and you brought yourself a front row ticket? You and that big fat walrus so he could cheer you on? But you see, you're real smart, Brock, because you do have a front row ticket, but you've also got another ticket, and that's to a big Brahma Bull ass whooping, not yesterday. No. The ass whooping is not yesterday. It's not tomorrow. The Brahma Bull ass whooping is tonight.
Oh my God! Tonight! Oh my God! Oh, we're gonna see it tonight, there!
Whoa.
Hey, oh! Uh-oh. Who the hell you think you are? Huh?
Who is The Rock? Who is The Rock? Oh, you should know who The Rock is. You interrupt The Rock will be the guy who get in that ring, tighten his shoes, and whoop your ass.
That's who The Rock is!
Well, maybe you don't remember. You and The Rock, Triple H and The Rock. Well, The Rock, let The Rock break it down for you. The Rock, the most electrifying man in sports and entertainment. The Rock. The Rock. Brahma Bull. Great one. People's champ. And oh, to say the least, The Rock is something you're not, undisputed champion, so shut up, bitch. So Brock Lesnar.
Ho, hey, ho. You left out one thing there, superstar. You left out one important thing. You left out the fact that if you do lace up those little sneakers real tight and walk up those stairs, you're the guy that's gonna get...
So I'll stop it right there because I know I said that it was the first time in close to 18 months that they hadn't crossed paths, but, you know, if you take away that one bit on Monday Night Raw following WrestleMania 17 in April of 2001, which really had nothing to do with these two, it was kind of just to close out the program between The Rock and Austin and start the two-man power trip. These guys really hadn't been entrenched in a rivalry for 2 years because the last time their rivalry, for all intents and purposes, culminated at SummerSlam 2000 in that triple threat match with Kurt Angle. And like I previously said, their rivalry was arguably done by that point as it was more Angle and Triple H. So when The Rock brought that up, that, you know, we started talking about their rivalry, you know, it had been almost dormant for 2 years at this point, and a lot had changed. The Attitude Era was gone. Ruthless Aggression Era was full effect. The Rock was talking trash to Brock Lesnar, who was sitting front row with Paul Heyman. So it was kind of cool and a kickback of nostalgia to see these two guys go at it with one another, especially that Stone Cold Steve Austin had walked out on the company, less than 2 months before this. So, and the program, the promos between these two I always found were really, really good because A, they're two of the best promos in WWE history. And number two, The Rock could just make light of anything and is just hilarious when he wants to be. And Triple H is, in my opinion, the best heel of all time. Maybe arguably just under Ric Flair, but I think that Triple H is the undisputed best of all time. But obviously that's a subjective opinion. So I always really enjoyed their promos with one another. But let's just see how this promo would play out between The Rock and Triple H, which was getting pretty tense.
You are the guy that is going to get everything, including his little sneakers laced up real tight. You're the guy that's going to get his ass kicked you walk in this ring.
Oh, boy. What a quality situation. The Rock. Oh, wait. Here we go. Here we go. Oh, The Rock. He just took down some talent.
Okay. So let The Rock understand this, Big Shot. You want to go? Is that what you want to do, Triple H? You and The Rock, Triple H, one more time. Do you want to go?
I want to see it. Go, go. I'd love to see him go.
I would love to go.
No, boy.
Well, then go get The Rock a bologna sandwich, because this doesn't concern you.
Oh, look out! Look out! The King and The Rock! The King and The Rock! Right hands! And The Rock getting the upper hand now! The undisputed champion! Wow! Look at the King! Triple H trying to go! The Flicker! Looks like a SmackDown! Next big thing! Wait a minute! Wait a minute! Look out! The King! Oh my God! What a pedigree! What a pedigree! Where's security? Brock Lesnar distracted The Rock long enough for the King to lower the boom with that pedigree.
So Triple H scores with the pedigree after Brock got himself involved, and this led to a match between the two to main event Raw that night, and it ended in no contest with HBK getting involved on behalf of The Rock, Brock getting involved on behalf of Triple H. And it was just ultimately a means to an end to lead to their respective programs. But this was basically the end of The Rock versus Triple H for a very long, long time. And take a look at where their respective careers went. The Rock went off to Hollywood for the following 9 years. And Triple H, in a lot of ways, became the face and the anchor of WWE that led them through the Ruthless Aggression era right up until it was time in 05, 06 for Batista and Orton and John Cena to really take the torch and run to it. And Monday Night Raw was really carried in a lot of ways by Triple H for the succeeding 2-3 years following this promo between The Rock and Triple H. Because when you lose Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Rock, inside of a year, it's something that's tough to go through. And then, Brock was supposed to be the next big thing, but he left less than 2 years into his debut in WWE. So, I mean, Triple H did a lot for WWE in this time, and obviously The Rock came back in 2011, and they ended up crossing paths in 2014, where they had the promo backstage where they started off as a friendly discussion, and then they started talking about their rivalries, got a bit tense, and then it ultimately led to nothing. Then The Rock helped Roman Reigns win the 2015 Royal Rumble, much to the dismay of the Authority, and the pay-per-view closed out with The Rock holding Roman Reigns' arm in the ring, and Stephanie and Triple H walking out in disgust on the top of the ramp. And then at WrestleMania 31 in 2015, we saw the final encounter between The Rock and Triple H, and the promo is way too long to play. I think it took up over 30 minutes or so, but WrestleMania 31, on a side note, is one of my favorites of all time. Really suggest you guys go watch that. When Seth Rollins infamously cashed in his Money in the Bank to win his first ever WWE Championship. We saw The Rock come out, trash talk the Authority. Stephanie McMahon slaps him in the face, and then he brings Ronda Rousey, who is sitting front row at this pay-per-view, into the ring. She hits Triple H with like a hip toss, puts Stephanie McMahon in like some kind of arm lock, a standing arm lock. And this was the first time we saw Ronda Rousey in a WWE ring, and this is when the seeds really started to get planted for her WWE debut and her eventual first ever match at WrestleMania 34 in the mixed tag team match with Kurt Angle against Triple H and Stephanie McMahon in 2018. But if I'm not mistaken, it was supposed to be The Rock, and they were supposed to clash at the following WrestleMania or one of the following WrestleManias, but they kept delaying it to try and make The Rock's schedule work. But as we know, he never got back in the WWE ring for an official match following his 2013 main event against John Cena at WrestleMania, where he ripped his pelvic muscle, something like that. And following that match, he couldn't due to insurance issues with movies and whatnot, which is totally understandable. But on a side note, I'm pretty certain, I want to say I'm 95% sure that match, the mixed tag team match with Kurt Angle and Ronda Rousey versus The Authority, was supposed to be The Rock. And that much is evident of how they brought Ronda Rousey into WWE programming with The Rock in 2015 at WrestleMania. And it's a shame that The Rock couldn't get it done, because I think that would have been awesome. And in a lot of ways, I wanted The Rock to face Triple H upon his return to the company when he was around in pretty much almost full time in 2012, 2013. I really, really thought that it would have been good for the company to kind of reignite that rivalry one more time. And by that point, they were both still in their primes, I would say. They could have had a great match, Triple H especially. It was only the last few times that I saw Triple H maybe starting to slow down a bit. But in 2013, he was in peak shape, even 2012. And it's a shame that The Rock couldn't work it out with his movie schedule and his insurance companies to get that deal done and eventually have that one last showdown with Triple H, especially after their confrontation at WrestleMania 31. But all in all, this was one of the more historic rivalries, one of the more lengthy rivalries, and two guys that really stepped up and carried the company in the absence of Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker in late 1999 and early 2000. And in a subjective Mount Rushmore, these two guys are absolutely on it, no questions asked. And Triple H especially, I know people talk about his golden shovel and whatnot, but he really did a lot for WWE in the late Attitude Era and all of the Ruthless Aggression Era, where he really was the anchor for the company, specifically on Monday Night Raw. But look, guys, that's all I got for you today. You can get me on Twitter at ADemarco25. You can get Matt on Twitter at wrestling_audio. You can email him at realwwepodcast@gmail.com. I hope you enjoyed it. Back on track. I got my voice back, and I will talk to you next week.